We're going to learn in this video how to write basic HTML. Now, HTML is one of the things that's most, I don't know, it's everywhere. It's sort of like a background thing that you've probably picked up, even if you've just been on the internet. But I did a series a couple weeks ago starting about like how to have your own website, how to start your own website. But I didn't actually do anything about writing a website. It's a very easy process. Now, of course, I should say we're going to learn HTML in this video. You can do these fancy and complicated static site generators or all these other ways of generating a website. But I just think the Chad way of writing a website is just opening it up and writing HTML. That's what I do. So that's what we're going to do in this video. I am going to be using Vim as my editor because people on the internet told me it's cool. And usually to start a website, you're going to start an index.html file. Okay, and that's because if you go to like yourwebsite.com, if you go to my website, which is lukesmith.xyz, it's automatically going to seek the index file. That's going to be the main page. Now, I'm going to do something a little irregular. Usually when you hear people doing tutorials on HTML or anything else, they start by telling you, okay, you got to put in a doc type and all this other stuff. The thing about HTML is that how it's rendered in browsers, you basically can be a retarded boomer and still write HTML and it will still work in most browsers. You actually don't, now of course this is, don't do this, but I should just say, you can actually just start writing, oh, here's our header, so here is, the Uniboomers cabin, the name of my website, and, or at least the one that I was making in the last video, and so this is a sentence, okay? So technically speaking, in order to have a properly formatted HTML page, you need other things like this. But most browsers, if I open this up in my browser, it's actually going to render it. Okay. Now, first off, what does HTML usually look like? Now, I should say, if you got to stick to learn how to add in the other information about a file. But I just want to go into what this basic stuff means. So if you look here, what have I done here? Now, this H1 thingy is going to render as a big header, okay? And this P thing, this actually stands for paragraph. It's rendering as a paragraph, okay? So basically, you've probably seen people use tags colloquially on the internet. You know, people are probably like, slash sarcasm, ha ha ha. I can't spell sarcasm, but who cares? That, of course, is imitating the tags of HTML. So basically, in order to say that something is a paragraph, we open the P tag, we put some stuff in it. Here is another paragraph. And then once we're done, we close the P tag. Okay, so that is, in general, how all of HTML is going to work. Now, there are some tags that do not need to be closed. We'll talk about those as well. But just to be clear, so let's play around with this a little bit. So I can, of course, have multiple paragraphs. Okay, and you'll see that each one of them is going to be formatted differently. Let's say I delete these, okay? Let's say I'm a boomer and I don't know how to write HTML, so I only have half of the syntax there. One thing about HTML is that most browsers are going to just try and guess, even if you have bad syntax like this, they're just going to try and guess what you mean there, okay? So you could delete the beginning of these tags or the ends of these tags, at least in the case of the paragraph tag, and it will render it correctly. Now, that's not going to work for everything. If you delete the end of the header tag, it's going to be like, okay, I guess those are all headers, but anyway, or heading, I should say. Those are technically different things. So anyway, in addition to this, so we know how to write paragraphs. We know how to write headers or headings. So here's another one, another heading. Now, notice, of course, both of these have H1. H1 is basically the biggest heading. So if I look at this now, you have a big heading, you have a big heading. The one here, just to be clear, does not mean the first heading at the top. It means the biggest type of heading. If we put in an H2 here, that is basically a subheading. So subheading, okay. So if we put in an H2, let's see what that looks like. It looks like it's a heading, but it's slightly smaller, okay? Or if we put in an H3, that's going to be the same deal. Okay, so an H3 is like a subheading, okay? Change this to H3, let's look at that. So this is even smaller, and I think it goes down to like H6 or something like that. Okay, so in addition, let me actually move this over here because we're writing more stuff. Let's say something like text formatting. So let's format bold text or italic text, okay? Or actually, we can do or underline text. Okay, so in each of these cases, bold is just going to be the B tag, I is going to be the I tag, and U is going to be or underline is going to be the U tag. You see in each of these cases, it's produced the text that we want. Okay, and of course, you cannot, like the paragraph tags, you can't mess these up. It's going to get confused if you like delete the end of this. It's probably going to bold everything for the rest of the document. Yep. And notice, oh, actually, I should say, so you should know that you can like put bold tags inside of italic tags to make it like both bold and italic or something like that. Now, it's usually thought of as slightly better form to use these, however. Okay, so for example, you know, here is the strong tag, strong tag, and the emphatic tag. Okay, so I'm going to show you what this looks like. Now, strong text is basically going to look exactly like bold. It is predefined as being exactly bold. And emphatic is going to look exactly like italic. Now, technically, the reason there's a difference between strong and B and inf and italic is because basically the bold, the B and the I and the U tag, they're not supposed to change. They're always going to be the same. But it's usually thought of as better form to use the strong tag or the emphatic tag, because when you go into actually changing the style sheet of your website, it's better form to be able to modify like the strong tag. Let's say you, instead of wanting something emphatic to be italic, you want to change it to be, maybe it's underlined or green or flashing or something like that. You can do that in CSS by modifying the M tag, okay? But it's sort of bad form to modify the I tag directly. Okay, that's what that's for. Now, before we get to that, though, let's do at least one more thing. One thing you do pretty common is make lists. How do you make a list in HTML? It's not too difficult. We'll make an ordered list. Now, to make an ordered list, I'm going to use the OL tag, ordered list. And inside of that, you can have LI tags. That means a list item. So here is a list item. Okay, and I'm going to close that tag, and in fact, I'm going to multiply that a couple times, and let's see what that is going to look like. Now we have a list, and we have 7 items in it. Notice that HTML has automatically numbered all of these 7 items. That is part of the ordered list. Now, if you just want an unordered list or a bulleted list, just use UL for unordered list. And if you run that, if you see what that looks like, oh, it's just going to have bullets. And in each of these cases, you can actually, let's say I copy this entire list, and I'm going to paste it inside of this list. Okay, so now we have a list inside of a list. What is that going to look like? Okay, well, you're basically going to have a sublist, and it has a slightly different annotation here, a little dot without stuff filled in. Okay, so that is basic HTML formatting. This is not just the kind of stuff you use in making a website, but you also might, use a web form that requires HTML formatting. Now, all of you people who are web devs are screaming right now because I have just been writing HTML without having a proper header or heading with a doc type and all that other stuff. Now, I said HTML, as it's rendered in browsers, is usually very, very forgiving. But there are certain things that you always want to include in your HTML documents, okay? One of the most important ones at the very top and the very first line should be this. It should be exclamation point, doc type, and then HTML. And that's HTML is going to be lowercase, doc type is going to be capital. Now that is basically just telling your browser or other people's browser when they look at your website that this is a proper HTML document. If it does not see this, your browser is basically going to guess exactly how to format it, and it might guess wrong or it might be something weird. I think if you don't include this, like Internet Explorer at least will totally break. Okay, so that's something you don't want to happen. Additionally, you want to set an HTML tag, and you want to include some information about this HTML that you're writing. Okay, so for example, you're probably going to want to do this, HTML set lang equal to en for English. So we've opened this HTML tag at the top, and I'm going to end it at the bottom. Okay, That is good form to have. And also, the body text of your document is usually put into a body tag. So I'm going to open this tag up here, and I'm going to close it at the bottom right before HTML. Notice that the body tag is inside of HTML. Okay. Now the reason for this, the reason you usually do this is multifold actually, but one of the reasons is we might want to set, when we start doing styling and coloring and stuff in CSS, we might want to set specific like traits for the text that's inside of the body and things like that. And that also, it also helps with rendering across platforms and things like that. Now last and not least, you want to have a head. Okay, or you know, a header in here, and this basically contains metadata and other information about your document. Okay, first off, notice in my browser that this is named index.html. Now, if I were to put this up on a website, it would probably show up there as index.html, or maybe depending on what kind of server you have displaying that, might do something different. But really, we want to set a title for this. How do you set a title? Well, you set it in the head tag. You say title, whatever you want to name your site, the Uniboomers Cabin. Okay? Title. Now if I refresh this, you will see, oh, now it has a proper title. Okay, that's good. Another thing that you are going to want to do, I had to write this down because I always get it a little wrong, okay, is that you are going to want to set to have Unicode proper UTF-8 characters. So that is meta, char set, however you want to say it, char set, UTF-8, okay, and a slash there. And that is just telling your browser, okay, I want to use, if you're using a non-English language, everything is going to show up as a mess until you have this thing included. So that is something you are definitely going to want. Additionally, now that we've sort of gotten this is basically what you need for a bare bones. I've sort of formatted this ugly because we could take this and I don't know, move it out a little bit. So I don't know. See, I'm usually not the person who even tabs in on anything. Usually I just keep it all to the left side. But this is basically a bare bones web page. Okay, so we have our doc type. We have our header here that tells us that we're using Unicode UTF-8 and tells us what the title is. And then we have the text, the actual content of our website. And again, as I said, like sometimes HTML is a little forgiving, but don't rely on that. Always make sure to write, good HTML code. Now, let's talk about how you actually change what this, like the colors and stuff. Let's say you want to edit it. Let's say you want to put it maybe in the middle of the screen instead of over here on the left side or something like that. Well, what we do is we create a CSS style sheet. CSS stands for cascading style sheet. So a CSS style sheet, I guess, is a cascading style sheet, but whatever. You're probably not supposed to say it that way, but who cares? Now, basically what you do is you tell your web page, okay, I'm going to have a style sheet. It's going to be this separate file, and I am going to use that I'm going to put all the information you need there. So in your head tag here, we're going to have another thing here. We're going to say link, and it's going to say ref, or rel, excuse me, style sheet, and then I want to say I think I wrote it down. Yeah, type. It's going to be text, CSS. Ooh, I cannot type today at all. And then also you're going to give it the file name, or really href, but this is the file name. And I'm going to name my file style.css. You can name it theoretically anything. Okay. So now what this is going to do, if you just run it and see what happens, nothing is going to change on your website. But now what this is going to say is this HTML document is going to look for this file, styles.css, and it is going to look for all the extra settings that you set there for how it's going to look. Let's go ahead and start doing some of that. I'm going to create this new file, style.css. And let's start playing with it. Now let's modify our body tag. Okay, so as I said, we have a body tag that we can modify. We can put information, different settings in there. Let's say I, like everyone else on the internet, hates having a light theme. Light themes are utter cringe. I want to get rid of it. I want this to be dark, easy on the eyes. If you're if you're in your dark room browsing, you don't want all this white background all over the place. So I'm going to say this. I'm going to say color, and color usually refers to the color of the text. I'm going to say color is going to be white. And I'm going to say the background is going to be black. Okay, these are settings built into CSS. Now if I run that, you'll see that, oh, look at that. Now we have a nice dark site, okay? Nice and readable. You can edit other things as well. Let's say I want to edit the headings. Let's say I want them to stick out a little more, okay? You can do things like this. You can say H1, and I'm going to say the color of that is going to be red. Okay, that'll make it stick out very, I don't know, very strong. Okay, so now our H1s are sticking out, okay? Or you can do something, I mean, let's say we want H2s to stick out as well. We have one of those second headings. We can go in here and add a little block that says H2 is going to be red. Okay. Now, of course, there's an easier way to do this. Let's say both H1 and H2 are going to have the same settings. Well, I could just get rid of this and say, you know, comma H2. And that is actually going to apply to both of those. You know, none of it's going to change. But it's sometimes good form to keep them separate, especially if you want to later go in and change. Let's say I want H2s to be green or something like that. Okay. So you can change things like that. Let's see what else. So let's say I mentioned that you could change stuff like, let's change what we want emphatic text to look like, because we had this little emphatic stuff here. Let's say I want that to be, you know, font size large. This is probably going to look really ugly, but it can be done. Okay, so that's going to get a little bigger. Actually, let's make it extra, extra large, XX large. Okay, so that is going to be really big. Now that looks ugly, but that's just something you can do with the tag. Let's say, you know, maybe something more realistic is you change the color to be yellow. Actually, that's still going to look ugly, but who cares? This is an example video, okay? So this adds a little change to your site here. Additionally, let's say we have list items here. Let's say our list items are too big. That's just something I want people to go over. We can change the size of list items. Let's say font size small, okay? So that is going to decrease the size of these list items, just if you want that, okay? And this goes for anything. Now, I'm not going to show you everything you can do with CSS. I just want to give you an idea with it. But you can go in and start changing how things look and how they're organized, okay? Another thing you're probably going to want is, you know, on this web page at least, all of our text is on the left side. That is by default how everything is going to display in HTML. Let's say we want to change that. There are a couple things you're going to want to do. We're going to set some settings to the body tag, but there are a couple things we're going to want to do. We want to say something like this. So let's say max width. We want it to be 800 pixels. Okay? And I'm going to do two other things. Let's say margin left is going to be auto, and margin right is going to be auto. Okay. Now, if I look at this document, I'm going to refresh it. Now that what that's going to do is it's sort of going to display it in the middle. Now, what we've told using the CSS, what we have told it to do is said this. Okay, the body tag, let's treat it as if it is only 800 pixels wide. So instead of just automatically being the whole thing, it's only going to be 800 pixels. So it's going to be, let's say, the 800 pixels in here. We've also told it to, when you give it the margin left, margin right thing, that basically, or the make them automatic, that basically just says, well, in this case, it's just going to say center it. And it's going to, so the body is just going to be the 800 pixels in the middle. If we change this to like 600 or something like that, you're going to notice that it moves a little in. Now it is only the 600 pixels in the middle or something like that. Or let's say, you know, 1,000 or something like that, okay? So that is sort of a way of centering things. Now, if you just want text to be aligned or something like that, well, let's say 800. That'll be what we stick with. Okay, does that look okay? You can also just align text. You could, let's say we want our headings to be in the middle of everything. So let's say we want H1 and H2 to be centered. You can say text align, okay, center. I think that's how you do it. Okay, let's look at this. So I'm going to refresh it. Okay, so now all of our headings are in the middle. This actually looks a little ugly, and the reason it does is we don't have text that like goes through the entire, like normally paragraph text would be taking up like all this space over to this side, so it would look sort of nice, but since we're not writing that much at all, it looks sort of ugly. But that's how you center text and things like that. So HTML and CSS, hopefully this has given you sort of a view of how to do basic things in them. But I want to talk about two more things that I think are pretty essential. Now, I will say this, of course, has not been exhaustive. You're going to have to learn some of this stuff on by yourself. But two more things I think are important. One is making links to other pages, and the other is adding images. So let's do those really briefly. Let's say I'm going to make another page. I'm going to call it another.html. Okay, so here's a new blank HTML document. I'm actually going to go ahead and copy in most of this stuff that is required. Okay, so we got our HTML tag. We got our header up here. I'm going to change this title to another page. And we have our body tag. And I'm going to go ahead and write something in here. You know, here is another page. Okay. So in a paragraph here is some cool content, exclamation point. And let's open this in a browser and we'll see that, okay, now we have another page. So how do we link this page to our original page? Very, very easy to do, one or vice versa, it doesn't matter. Let's say up here I want to, on our original page, I'll say check out this other page. Okay, and let's say I want this to be the link. So what you do is you use the A tag, and what you do, that is going to look something like this. Okay, and A is basically for hyperlink, and you give it the href option, and the href is just going to be, what do you want this to link to? I want it to link to the page another.html. It's in the same directory. It's going to be on the same directory in that website as this page. So whenever we click on, let's actually see how it looks, you know. So it's going to show up with a little link here, link here. And if I click on that, just to verify, I'm going to close this out, but just to click on this, it is going to go to this other page. Excellent, okay. In addition, if I go to that other page, I can add a link back to the index. So let's say href index.html. Remember, that's the name of our main page. And I'm going to say return to the home page. Okay, close those tags there, that paragraph tag and the A tag. So it's going to say return to home page. I really need to change the CSS because it's hard to read here. But that is going to return us to where we belong. Okay, so that is how to do links. Now, if you want to link to a website, let's say I want to link to, another website, not just like a page that you've created. Well, then you just put the URL here. Let's say I want to link to my website, https://lukesmith.xyz. You got to include HTTPS, stuff like that if you're doing a foreign website. So now there's this link and I can click on it and it is going to take me to my website. Okay, so there's my website, another web page on the internet, which is loading slow because I'm out in the middle of nowhere and I have bad internet. I need to get rid of all these pictures. I need to slim down my website. I need it to look more like this. Okay. So that is how you add links. And I mentioned adding images. Let's add images. I've actually, in this directory, I have included a little image, cabin.gif. It's actually a GIF file, as you can guess. So you can, of course, have moving GIFs. To include an image, you're going to do this. Obviously, it's the image tag. You don't need to close this tag. You just say image source and then name the file, cabin.gif. It needs to be in the same directory, or if it's in another directory, let's say it's in your pics directory inside this website, it's going to be like that. But cabin, that is just going to make the image appear. And it's a GIF, it's moving around. Okay, great. So working is according to plan. It's also a good habit to add in some other information, let's say alt, which is going to be, let's say the image can't display, it's going to display this alternative text. So we'll just say this is cabin or something like that. And you can also do title and, this is a cabin, okay? So what that is going to do, if I refresh this page, if I mouse over it, it's going to say this is a cabin. Okay, that's how you do that. All right, so I've done basically what I consider all the basics of HTML. So again, remember to have all your doc type, all this kind of stuff up here. Hopefully that I have made sense of how to do basic formatting, linking, images, some CSS. The world of CSS is very big. I encourage you to check it out yourself. I cannot teach you all of it, but I might do another video maybe on divs and other things like that, you know, how to do more special stuff. But this will give you at least what you need to make a nice 1990s boomer website like this. This looks so nice. I don't know. I wish the internet still looked like this. But you can do your part by having a simple HTML website. Okay, so that's it. See you guys next time.